Well, good afternoon or good morning, everyone. I'm so glad to be with you again today. My name is Cyndy McDonald, and I have the distinct honor and privilege of interviewing subject matter experts from all over the world, talk about topics that are important to us as we work with students and families. And today I'm very honored to have with me Steve Colley. He is the owner and founder of Waypoint College Consulting in Little Rock, Arkansas. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Cindy.
Glad to have you here. You've also been one of my students in my UCLA class, right?
Oh yeah, fantastic class, by the way.
Well, I'm glad. I'm glad. Well, it's these kind of interviews, so now you're going to be part of that. And so I want you to tell us a little bit about yourself and your military background and service.
Sure. Um, well, for me, I think my whole story with the military really touches on a lot of experiences that veterans face across the board. I was born and raised on an Air Force base. Went to 12 different schools around the world, and then last place that we lived was here, Little Rock, and where my dad retired. And I was in high school, 17 years old, when I saw the Towers collapse on 9/11, with a bunch of classmates, and wanted to serve. So went to a Marine Corps recruiting office the very next day to try to sign up. And the recruiter said, well, we need your parents' consent to join. And there was no way in hell that my parents were going to allow me to do that. So I ended up going to the Naval Academy instead, which was a fantastic experience. And after the Naval Academy, I commissioned as a Marine Corps officer, served 6 years in the Marines. The very first tour that I had was with an infantry battalion. And we went to Afghanistan during the surge of 2010, and were sent to a very remote location in Helmand province, where a lot of the Afghans thought that we were Soviets because they hadn't seen people like us since then. And it was very chaotic. We lost many Marines. I personally lost a couple of my Marines and saw them killed in action. And it was a very moving experience because you train together, you work together, you bond with their families. You're an entire family 24/7 during training and during the deployment. While we're gone, the families are supporting each other. And so after my 6 years, I always wanted to just do my commitment and get out. Did an extra year, and when I got out, I realized that there was a big disconnect for me because I had been part of the military my entire life. And here I am for the first time, a civilian. I decided to go to DC, and I worked on Capitol Hill, where I worked on military issues and veterans issues. And that's when I really started to grasp an understanding of the civilian military divide. Worked there for a couple of years, went to grad school, used my post 9/11 GI Bill for that, and then came back to Capitol Hill and worked in the Senate. And I was a legislative staffer on the Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs, where I worked on a lot of policy issues, touched on some education policy, but it was mainly small business, homeless veterans, a lot of your non-healthcare related issues. And after a while, I felt a little bit burnt out. I think a lot of it was residual from my time in service. Just kind of putting that aside, a lot of the things that I witnessed, and really needed some time to reflect. And so I decided to take a big leap of faith and do something that I thought I'd be passionate about. I always mentored students as an adult, as my side gig. I would help kids that were really interested in service academies, especially the Naval Academy. I helped blue and gold officers, with, the interview process. And I felt that might be, more of my calling, to do that type of thing, and to be a leader and a mentor and share my experiences in a certain way. So I went on a long hike in the Appalachian Trail for 200 miles and came home, felt refreshed, and started exploring this, and went to the UCLA college counseling program. I did 6 classes in the first 2 terms, starting back in the winter,
Oh,
and used my post 9/11 GI Bill for that, which was awesome. So I have my practicum coming up, but that was my experience. Seeing it from the military brat, someone who served in the military, seeing, what a service academy is like, what the role of the officer is, and how different it is, from the enlisted guys, and the challenges that they face, and then seeing it from a policy perspective as well. So, my goal is to be a voice for veterans, in the world of, college counseling and college access, because, a lot of these veterans, a lot of them are first generation students, let alone the fact that they have, a lot of it, these unique issues that they bring to the table, and a loss of a sense of community. So I think it's important to, share these experiences with, future counselors, so that they have a better understanding of, what makes a veteran tick, and, what they offer, and we're not all broken, we're very resilient, but that's not to diminish some of the challenges that they do face. And there are plenty of resources for that. So I'm happy to share a lot of that with you.
Oh, that sounds great. And we will be putting those in to the course. I have your presentation that you put together, and it's just so wonderful to have that contribution and that perspective. So you mentioned some of the different challenges and the civilian veteran divide. What are those challenges? What are the biggest challenges veterans face when they're transitioning from military service back to or into civilian life for the first time? So what are some of the specific challenges that you faced, or you see other veterans facing?
Yeah, so I think some of the big ones are, one, there is a civilian military divide. A lot of civilians can't relate to a veteran's experience. They're well-intentioned, thank you for your service. You hear it all the time. You see it all the time. I wouldn't say that it gets old, but it just feels like, okay, that's nice, but you really don't understand. And I want people to understand. And I think they want to understand as well. And I think if there is that understanding, then it will start eliminating some of the stereotypes that are out there. A lot of, the stigmas that are out there, the Rambo from Hollywood, who is a ticking time bomb, or the broken veteran, who is an alcoholic. Don't get me wrong. There are people that are like that are truly suffering, and they need our help. Mental health issues are a big issue for the veteran community. But there are a lot of resources that are out there, and there's a fantastic community to help veterans. The problem is, and another issue is, that a lot of veterans don't know what they don't know. They go from a community that is, brotherhood, a sisterhood, that their families are part of that. It's 24/7. It's not a 9-to-5 job. We play on the weekends together. The kids play together. We go on trips together. We train together. And then when we go and deploy, we deploy as a unit, and the family that's left behind, they get together. And they get together in the bases and base housing and do that. So when they leave that, they're longing for that sense of camaraderie in the civilian world, and they try to instill themselves in this, hierarchical structure that isn't there, and they're left alone, searching for, in a sea of options, and they can get lost. And so I think that's why it's important to, allow veterans to understand what's out there, to communicate to them that there are communities across the United States, even in the smallest places in rural, countries to the big cities, there's a home for veterans, for people to understand and relate to them, and so, what I tell, veterans is, understand what your wars are, and communicate with one another, and listen to the civilian perspective. They are well-intentioned, they are here to help, but they also need to hear your story. And, for the civilians, to listen and to help empower them, especially for counselors, and, happy to share some resources and different ways of looking at this.
So when veterans are planning to transition, they know they're going to be coming out of the military. There's certain classes or training that they go through. And is that across all the branches?
It is.
Or how does that work?
Yeah. So it is a requirement that all service members have to go through a transition assistance program within the last 180 days of their service. And a lot of military guys look at that as a check in the box. A lot of them have senioritis, getting out of the military. They're ready to get out and pursue other things, right? They think the grass is greener on the other side and they're just ready to move on, and then come to realize that, oh, well, I don't have that community. Oh, I have some issues that I need to deal with. I have some benefits that I can use. I have healthcare that I can, use. And the transition assistance program teaches them that. It shows them all the benefits. They bring in the Department of Labor to teach them how to start a business if they want to do that. They talk about going to college. I remember I was thinking about going to grad school, so I attended the going to college one, and I was the only officer among 100 enlisted guys. And they're talking about, getting a bachelor's degree and taking your SAT. And I was like, well, I've done that already. Can you guys talk about grad school? I don't know. So there's a little bit of that, but it is a very great resource. And another resource that I think is probably really good for folks to know is it's called Skill Bridge. And what it is, it's kind of an internship for the last 180 days of your service. And if your commanding officer allows you to do this, you can participate in some company or some business as an intern during those last 180 days. You're getting paid, you're getting, your military benefits, but you're going there to learn a different skill, or to have a better understanding, or to get some job training before you go to college. And this is available across the country. I just looked it up for Little Rock, and there's 10 different locations here just in Little Rock. So Skill Bridge is another, another good one. And when veterans get out, then what they need to do is get in touch with the VA. The VA has a lot of resources, and they have counselors that will help them understand what their benefits are, what they qualify for, especially if they have a post 9/11 GI Bill. If they qualify for that, they'll tell them exactly what it is and what schools they can go to and how much money they're going to get right off the bat. That's how I found out that I would be able to do UCLA and not UC Irving, when I was looking for college counseling. So that's there. And the final thing with transitioning would be, there's a lot of veteran service organizations. There's over 100 of them, and they touch every aspect you can imagine. Whether you're a homeless veteran and put you in shelter and get you job training to get you, back to work and a roof over your head, or, particularly for us, you have Student Veterans of America, which is a great organization that advocates for students across the board, and they have 1,500 chapters across, colleges, around the country, that are a great community, for veterans. You have Service to School, which is another great program where they connect veterans to graduates from undergrad programs or graduate school, law school, whatever, to help the veteran understand the process of getting in. So there's a lot of resources out there. It's just a matter of educating veterans that it's there, and to remind them that they are resilient and that they've trained and they're strong, they can do this, and to empower them, and that the post-traumatic stress that they might have, to reframe it as post-traumatic growth, because, we are all resilient, and when we can get there, some of us need a hand, and we're all here to help. And I think that's important.
Oh, I think so too. I love that phrase of post-traumatic growth. I think that's very, that changes the whole mindset, right?
Yeah.
So one of the frustrations that veterans have, we were talking about earlier, is how much education they do as a soldier, in the military, and then how that applies once they get out of the military. So talk a little bit about that and what that looks like.
Yeah. So, every service member has their military occupational specialty, and they receive all types of training for that. And some of that training can be translated into credits. Some of it doesn't. Some of it can be translated into a trade craft, for certain licenses. And the VA can help figure that out for you. They have that broken down. Like I was talking about Skill Bridge, that's another avenue that they can, take. For example, if you work in finance in the Army and you want to go work at a bank for a little bit to gain some experience, there are certain things that translate. I don't know specifically for that, but it's there. And then the other piece of it is, and I'm talking more of the enlisted side, because all officers went to college, but on the enlisted side, their experiences from high school a lot of it is, for some guys, it was, they almost got, left high school. They were, I remember when I was going in, back in 2008, I had enlisted guys that the judge told them, you have an option. You can go to jail or you can go into the military, and that's the experience that they had with education, and so, among the officers, we would try to mentor them and say, hey, you can get your education. And there are education programs while you're in the military where you can gain your credits, to get an associate degree or start working towards your bachelor's degree, and then possibly look at, transferring that to a school when you get out. So a lot of really good resources out there.
That's great. So you mentioned the different benefits, and depending on when they served, how do they know which educational benefits they have? Is that they just go to the VA and VA says, here's what you qualify for? Or how do they know what those are?
Yeah. So, the most important first step, and for the counselors out there, who are helping a veteran, to go to college, is they need to have their form that's called the DD 214. The DD 214 is the official summary of their military record, and that is their golden ticket to being a veteran. That tells them what kind of benefits they can have. It tells them specifically for education. When you look at the post 9/11 GI Bill, which is really the majority of veterans is what they're getting. You're no longer seeing the Montgomery GI Bill because those guys are a lot older now and they're probably not going to school anymore. But with the post 9/11 GI Bill, they'll look at the time in service that they had. If you have at least 90 days in service, you qualify for 40% of the full post 9/11 GI Bill. And the full post 9/11 GI Bill will pay for in-state tuition, of where you're a resident of, and then at a certain rate, depending on what private school private college you go to, and they have that broken down. And so the VA can help you look at that pretty quickly, just by registering on the VA. It's very easy. They made it a lot easier since the 2014 scandal that happened with a lot of wait times and a lot of that. So it's very fluid, but having that DD 214 is a very first step. And then once they have that, they can figure out how much post 9/11 GI Bill they get. They can also, some veterans will transfer that to their dependents. So to a child could qualify for that, and might have 100% of it. And that child needs to register with the VA and get that. For children that have parents that were killed in action, they automatically get 100% of the post 9/11 GI Bill. And then, fun fact, if you're dealing with a student that his father was a Medal of Honor recipient, he automatically gets into a service academy as long as he qualifies academically and physically. But there's probably a few of those. Yeah. So those are great programs, and the VA will help with that. If you're struggling with your VA representative from your location, reach out to the veteran service organizations. The Veterans of Foreign Wars is fantastic, and there's a chapter everywhere. Normally they look like a hole in the wall bar, because it is a bar sometimes, with a bunch of old guys from like the Korean War wearing their hats, but they have case representatives that will help you with your benefits, whether it's healthcare or education or all the other types of benefits. There's also the Disabled American Veterans, which is another organization for wounded service members, or if they think that they have different injuries or wounds or service-connected disabilities, they'll help them get their claims done, and also help them with the education side of it too, and get their accommodations and what is required, kind of like what we were learning in the counseling program, what types of accommodations to look for, and what's out there. And so they help with that, actually. And then I would say, finally, the Student Veterans of America is also another great resource.
Well, that's so exciting to hear that there are all these different organizations and service groups that people can turn to. So what can we as counselors or advisors do to help veterans more easily transition to a student life? What you've mentioned, some things that we should be aware of. Are there any other tips or advice you would give to us?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's as simple as, listening to their stories, um, being patient with some of the quirks that they may have that a civilian might not be used to. Um, as was watching the interview with Bob, saying that they're always on time, they're early, to a lot of the meetings, they're hard workers, and they are, and that's been drilled down on them, in their military training. Um, but also, a lot of times, veterans might wait for to be told to do something. Not all the time. So to understand like where they're coming from, what's their context, that they're coming to you, and feel free to just tell them what to do and they'll do it.
They're
Because
good at those checklists, right?
they're good at the checklist, they're good at orders, and they'll make it happen, so but also, there will be veterans that do struggle. There are veterans that have, you know, one of the things that I struggled with was a severe sense of guilt, decisions that I made that cost lives. And understanding, to listen to their story, to see, where they're coming from, and so that you can learn what values they do bring to find the best fit school for them that might have certain accommodations, for veterans, and maybe reaching out to the Student Veterans of America to see if they have a chapter there that gives them a community where they will fit in. It is a great way of doing it. And then, understanding what the post 9/11 GI Bill is, because when I went to grad school, I was like, oh yeah, I have that. I forgot about that. And looking into that, and it took me a little bit to figure it out. But helping with that process as well. So I think listening and empowering them is very important, and letting them see it from a different perspective. What schools might be good for them that they had no idea. I mean, it's not that much different with regular students, but veterans will listen, and they want what's best for them and their families. I would say another aspect of it too is they're non-traditional students. You'll see a lot of them that have families, that have kids, that might have a part-time job. So they have to deal with that, and then also understanding that, okay, you're getting your undergrad degree. Know that the majority of these students are 18 years old. It's their first time away from the house. They may be a little bit more immature, trying to discover themselves. And, it's a source of frustration for veterans, but it's important for them to understand that, look, instead of being upset about that, and being annoyed by it, like, be a leader and be a mentor. The same way that you were as a sergeant to the younger guys that came in, you could do it in a similar way, rather than ordering them around, but, just, connect with them. You have to study with them. You do study groups, you'll be a source of help, for them, because in that way you'll learn a different community, and you'll find, similar bonds potentially. So I think communicating that to veterans will be very helpful.
I agree. And I think, the whole concept of being non-traditional students, because they are older, they have so much more life experience, and using that as a mentor, they also aren't messing around. Like, they don't feel like, okay, I can take 6 years to do this, because
Right.
they have family, they have obligations and things. So they want to get down to work, they want to make it happen. And a lot of times they don't realize how their skills will translate into a degree or a major or things like that. And so we can help them expand their perspective a little bit,
Right,
and
exactly.
help them to see that there is more that they can choose from than what they've been exposed to. And all students are that way. They've only been exposed to this amount of careers and majors, and being able to see and use those strengths and those capabilities that they've developed.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that sounds great. I will say I'm a daughter of, my dad was a veteran. He served in the Air Force,
Okay.
and it was during the Korean War. And my life, as a daughter, was totally changed. My dad didn't graduate from high school. He was he went partially to ninth grade, and then went into the military, and he became a mechanic. He learned all of that
Mm-hmm.
in, in his work in the service. And so, it has impacts not just on that particular individual, but on generations.
Yeah.
So then I was able to go on, and I was the first one in my family to even consider college. Um, so I definitely have a great, um, respect and gratitude for those opportunities. And so, if someone has a question, Steve, how do they get a hold of you?
Sure. Yeah, I am. I am open for anyone to reach out to me at any time. I answer any questions regarding veterans, service academies, ROTC. It's an area that I really want to specialize in. You can also go to my website where you can find out how to reach out to me too. My email address is Steve Colley at waypointcollege.com. And then you can also go to my website, which is waypointcollege.com. I am an open door, here to help anybody out, because I'm very passionate about veterans needs that are out there, and I think they can contribute very well to our country outside of the military. We just need to help them find those opportunities that are out there, and empower them.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. Well, thank you very much. This has been most educational and inspirational, so thank you.
And I appreciate it, Cyndy. Thanks so much.